She's not crazy, she's just finally done pretending. After 40, a woman doesn't lose her mind, she finds it, and that's what most people can't handle. There comes a moment in a woman's life when silence starts to feel heavier than any confrontation ever could. For years, she's been told that her strength lies in endurance, in keeping the peace, in not making a scene, in staying grateful even when her soul feels suffocated. From her 20s through her 30s, she's been balancing everything: careers, homes, relationships, children, expectations, and doing it with a smile because that's what was expected of her. She was taught that being good meant being accommodating, agreeable, and composed. But what no one tells her is that constant composure eventually becomes emotional compression. Every time she bites her tongue instead of speaking her truth, every time she swallows disappointment to avoid being called dramatic, every time she carries the weight of others' comfort at the cost of her own, it builds pressure inside her, quietly, invisibly. And then one day, that pressure finds its breaking point. It often doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It can begin as a small shift. She stops replying to messages that drain her energy. She becomes quieter around people who used to control her with guilt. Or she simply wakes up one morning and feels a strange numbness where she used to feel endless responsibility. The world calls it detachment, but in truth, it's the first sign of awakening. It's not that she suddenly becomes careless. It's that she can no longer carry care that isn't reciprocated. For decades, she's been the emotional caretaker, the problem solver, the fixer of broken situations. But now the fixer is exhausted. She's poured from her cup for so long that it's dry, and all she can feel is the emptiness echoing back. This is when the people around her start noticing, she's changed, they say. She's not the same. But how could she be? You cannot remain the same after years of self-erasure. The breaking point doesn't arrive as anger alone. It often begins as sadness, a quiet, deep, unexplainable sadness that comes from realizing how much of her life has been lived on autopilot, performing roles she never chose consciously. She looks back and wonders how many dreams she postponed to be the stable one, how many times she dimmed her light so others could shine comfortably beside her. This realization hits hard. It's like a mirror shattering, not because she hates what she sees, but because she finally sees the truth. That truth is painful, but it's also sacred. It's the beginning of emotional honesty. In that phase, she might cry without reason, feel restless, or crave solitude more than company. Her body and mind are processing years of suppressed emotion. This is not insanity, this is release. But the world, unfamiliar with women who express raw emotion, misinterprets her healing as hysteria. Society is more comfortable with her silence than her self-expression. So when she stops smiling through disrespect, when she starts setting boundaries, when she begins to choose peace over pleasing, people feel threatened. They call her irrational, unstable, crazy. But what they don't realize is that the version of her they once praised was surviving, not living. The breaking point is not her downfall. It's her unmasking. It's the moment when she stops carrying everyone else's emotional baggage and finally starts unpacking her own. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's raw, but it's real. And for the first time in a very long time, she's not afraid to feel everything she once buried. The awakening doesn't happen overnight. It's not a single event or revelation. It's a gradual unfolding, a quiet rebellion that begins deep inside her. One day she wakes up and the things that once consumed her no longer hold the same power. The opinions that once defined her worth, the approval she chased endlessly, the validation she built her identity around, they start to lose their grip. What used to matter so much suddenly feels hollow, almost meaningless. It's not that she stops caring, it's that she starts caring differently. She begins to measure life not by how much she gives to others, but by how authentically she lives within herself. The noise that used to guide her decisions, societal expectations, family pressures, cultural narratives, becomes background static. And in that stillness, she starts to hear her own voice again, the one she silenced years ago. That voice whispers truths she once ignored. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to keep fixing everything. You don't owe everyone access to your energy. It's a strange and powerful shift. She starts seeing through illusions she once called love, loyalty, or duty. The relationships that once felt like home begin to feel suffocating because they were built on her self-sacrifice. She starts noticing how often she gave chances that were never earned, how many apologies she accepted without changed behavior, how many times she called endurance love. This awareness hurts at first. The awakening is never gentle. It feels like her entire emotional foundation is being rewritten. She feels the grief of lost time, of misplaced trust, of moments she spent trying to be enough for people who never truly saw her. But beneath that grief, something powerful begins to rise: self-respect. She starts to understand that peace is not a luxury, it's a boundary, and anyone who threatens it doesn't deserve proximity, no matter how long they've been in her life. Her energy begins to shift. She speaks slower, but her words carry more truth. She smiles less often, but when she does, it's genuine. She no longer feels the need to defend her choices or explain her healing. She realizes that some people will only understand her when she's shrinking, and that's exactly why she must expand. She starts to dress, speak, and move differently, not to impress, but to express. She learns to enjoy solitude, finding peace in her own company instead of fearing loneliness. Where she once sought connection out of fear of being alone, she now seeks it only from alignment. She stops settling for half-hearted love, conditional attention, or friendships that drain her spirit. The woman who once tolerated everything to keep others comfortable now chooses herself. And that choice changes everything. In this stage, people around her become uncomfortable. They notice the difference. The calmness in her voice, the confidence in her silence, the boundaries she no longer apologizes for. Some call it arrogance, others call it detachment, but in truth, it's clarity. She's not detached from life, she's detached from illusions. The awakening is a process of unlearning everything she was taught to be and remembering everything she was meant to be. She's not searching for herself anymore. She's returning to herself. Every realization pulls her closer to authenticity. Every moment of discomfort pushes her deeper into truth. And though the world might see her as changed, she knows she's simply becoming who she was always meant to be. Society has always had a strange relationship with women, especially as they grow older. When a man reaches his 40s, the world calls it his prime, a phase of wisdom, power, and maturity. He's admired for his experience, respected for his resilience, even desired for the confidence that age seems to grant him. But when a woman crosses that same invisible line, the narrative changes completely. Suddenly she's told she's past her peak, that she should tone down her voice, dress age appropriately, act her age, and accept invisibility as the new normal. The same age that gives men validation gives women judgment. She's no longer celebrated for her experience, but scrutinized for her choices. If she speaks boldly, she's bitter. If she stays silent, she's irrelevant. If she prioritizes herself, she's selfish. If she continues to care for everyone else, she's taken for granted. It's a trap that many women don't even notice until they begin to feel its walls closing in. The double standards that define their worth by everything except their own happiness. From a young age, she's conditioned to play roles that serve others. As a daughter, she learns to obey. As a partner, she learns to adjust. As a mother, she learns to sacrifice. And when those roles begin to shift in her 40s, when children grow up, when relationships evolve, when career ambitions take new forms, society doesn't quite know where to place her. She becomes too mature for the young and too free for the old. The culture she lives in has no clear identity for women who choose themselves. So when she begins to question the life she's built or express the truth she's kept hidden, she's labeled as unstable, emotional, or going through something. But the truth is, she's finally waking up to how unfair the entire structure has been. For decades, her worth was measured by how well she could nurture others. No one ever asked her if she felt nurtured herself. These double standards run deep. When a man seeks change after 40, it's called reinvention. He's encouraged to travel, explore, chase his passions, even start over if he wants. But when a woman does the same, she's accused of being lost or reckless. If she leaves a marriage that no longer feeds her soul, she's condemned for being ungrateful. If she focuses on her career, she's told she's trying too hard to prove something. And if she simply wants time for herself, to breathe, to think, to exist, she's told she's neglecting her responsibilities. The world applauds men for evolving, but punishes women for doing the same. It's not that society fears aging women, it fears awakened women, women who no longer seek permission to exist fully. Even the beauty standards mirror this hypocrisy. A man's wrinkles are seen as charm, but a woman's are treated as flaws to be erased. He's called distinguished, while she's told to fight time like it's an enemy. Aging for men is seen as empowerment. For women, it's treated like a slow disappearance. Yet, ironically, it is in her 40s that a woman's energy becomes the most magnetic, grounded, wise, and fearless. She's lived enough to understand what matters and strong enough to stop performing for the world's approval. But society isn't ready for that kind of woman. It's easier to call her crazy than to admit she's finally free from control. So instead of celebrating her transformation, the world tries to shame her back into silence, back into compliance, back into roles that no longer fit. It's not madness that the world sees. It's resistance, and resistance has always made people uncomfortable. When a woman reaches her 40s, the world loves to explain away her emotions with one word: hormones. It's the easiest excuse, the most convenient way to dismiss her truth. If she cries, it's hormones. If she gets angry, it's hormones. If she withdraws, it's hormones. It becomes a label that invalidates everything deeper that might be happening inside her. Of course, biology plays a role. Her body is shifting, her chemistry is recalibrating, and her cycles are changing. But the truth that no one wants to admit is that most of what she feels isn't just hormonal. It's honest. It's the truth rising to the surface after years of being buried. It's the soul finally rejecting what the body has been forced to tolerate. Hormones may amplify emotion, but they do not invent it. What's really happening beneath the surface is a confrontation with everything she suppressed, the disappointments she minimized, the resentment she swallowed, the dreams she postponed in the name of duty. Her body might be changing, yes, but so is her consciousness. The so-called mood swings people joke about are often moments of pure clarity disguised as frustration. She's not irrational, she's finally raw. For decades, she's been conditioned to regulate her emotions for the comfort of others, to smile when she's hurt, to stay calm when she's angry, to stay quiet when she's disrespected. But at this stage of life, the emotional filters begin to fade. She no longer has the energy to pretend. Her tolerance for lies, manipulation, and superficial relationships wears thin because her inner self is demanding alignment. She begins to notice what drains her energy and who disturbs her peace. The smallest dishonesty, even one she would have ignored before, now feels unbearable. This isn't instability, it's awakening honesty. It's her body, mind, and heart aligning for the first time. And yet the world calls it a hormonal imbalance because it cannot accept a woman who speaks her truth without shame. This stage is also deeply spiritual. The body and soul are in conversation, one trying to release what the other has carried for too long. Sometimes it looks like tears without explanation, anger that seems misplaced, or fatigue that no amount of rest can cure. But these are not weaknesses. They are signs that she's purging the emotional toxins of years spent pretending. She's releasing roles that never fit her. She's detoxing from the constant need to please, from the weight of perfection, from the silence that has been mistaken for strength. Her body may ache, her mind may wander, but what's really happening is renewal. She's shedding versions of herself that were built for survival, not authenticity. And as she does, her truth becomes louder, so loud that it can no longer be ignored. People around her might feel uncomfortable because they've known her as the calm, accommodating version, the one who never argued, never complained, never demanded more. Now, when she starts to express what she truly feels, they call her emotional, sensitive, or unpredictable. But the truth is, she's never been more clear. The things she used to tolerate now trigger deep resistance because they go against her truth. The voice inside her that once whispered now roars. What the world calls a hormonal phase is often her reclaiming the right to feel fully and to express without guilt. She's not losing control, she's taking it back. And while others might want to medicate her emotions away, she's beginning to see them for what they really are: signals, messages, and reminders that she's still alive, still evolving, and finally becoming emotionally honest after a lifetime of being emotionally muted. There comes a stage in every woman's life when she looks around and realizes she has spent years building everything for everyone else: a home, a family, a career, a reputation, and somewhere along the way, she misplaced herself. Her identity was slowly replaced by the roles she played: mother, wife, daughter, professional, caregiver, peacemaker. Each title demanded a piece of her until there was barely any room left for the woman underneath it all. For years, she believed that losing herself was noble, that selflessness was the highest form of love. But one day, she begins to question, who am I when no one needs me? Who am I when I'm not performing a role? That question marks the beginning of reclamation, not of who she was told to be, but of who she truly is. It's not an easy process. It feels like peeling back layers of identity that no longer fit, shedding expectations that were never hers, and confronting the quiet grief of realizing how much of her own life she put on hold. At first, this reclamation feels foreign, almost selfish. She's been programmed to feel guilty for choosing herself. For years, she's been rewarded for being accommodating, for giving more than she had, for stretching herself thin in the name of love. But now her soul begins to crave space, space to think, to breathe, to create, to simply be. She starts to rediscover forgotten passions, the small joys she once dismissed because they didn't seem productive. She remembers the music she used to love, the books that inspired her, the dreams that once made her heart race. There's a deep sadness in realizing how long she's neglected these parts of herself, but there's also a quiet thrill in reclaiming them. This isn't about reinventing who she is. It's about returning to the woman she's always been beneath the noise of duty and expectation. As she begins to rebuild her identity, she notices how differently people respond to her. Some are inspired, but others are unsettled. They preferred the version of her who never questioned, who always said yes, who existed to make others comfortable. Now, when she says no, when she draws boundaries, when she walks away from what drains her, it challenges the balance of relationships that were built on her silence. This is the cost of becoming authentic. It threatens the systems that benefited from her self-forgetting, but she no longer fears that loss. She understands that not everyone is meant to accompany her into this next chapter. Some relationships were only meant to exist within the version of her that no longer exists. Reclaiming identity also means redefining strength. For so long, she believed strength meant endurance, pushing through, holding everything together, never breaking. Now she learns that strength can also mean softness, stillness, and saying, I don't want this anymore. She realizes that her worth is not tied to how much she can bear or how much she can give, but how true she can be to herself. There's a profound beauty in watching her rediscover herself, the woman who laughs louder, who walks slower, who no longer rushes through life trying to prove her value. She begins to wear her experiences like armor and her scars like reminders of what she's survived. This phase of life becomes less about pleasing and more about peace, less about proving and more about presence. She's no longer trying to fit into a world that made her small. She's creating a world that fits her instead. When people say a woman goes crazy after 40, what they're really witnessing is not madness, but transformation. It's the unraveling of years of conditioning, the breaking down of the facade she's been forced to wear, and the rebuilding of a self that finally belongs to her. The real message behind this phase of her life isn't chaos, it's clarity. For decades, she's been carrying everyone's expectations on her back. How to behave, how to love, how to sacrifice, how to stay silent. She's been told that her value lies in her patience, her beauty, her ability to give endlessly without asking for much in return. But now she begins to see the truth. She's not here to be defined by others, not here to shrink herself to be accepted, not here to live a life that keeps her comfortable but unfulfilled. This realization is so profound that it shakes everything around her. The people who once praised her for being easygoing now call her distant. The ones who relied on her emotional labor feel abandoned when she stops overextending herself. But she's not pulling away from love. She's pulling away from imbalance. What they call rebellion is simply restoration. The real message is that this so-called crazy phase is the point at which a woman reclaims her power. Not the power that dominates others, but the power that centers herself. She starts seeing through manipulation disguised as care, through obligation disguised as loyalty, through expectations disguised as love. She realizes that much of what she once accepted wasn't kindness, but conditioning, a system designed to keep her agreeable, dependable, and contained. When she begins to reject that conditioning, it unsettles people who benefited from her compliance. But this time, she doesn't bend back into the shape they prefer. She's done performing normalcy for the comfort of others. She's learning that peace doesn't come from keeping everyone happy. It comes from being honest with herself. And honesty, for a woman who's been silenced for most of her life, feels revolutionary. This honesty begins to touch every part of her existence. It shows in how she speaks, how she walks, how she chooses who gets access to her. She stops seeking permission to exist in her fullness. She no longer explains her boundaries or her silence. She's not cold, she's clear, she's not detached, she's discerning. The fire that once burned to prove her worth now turns inward, becoming light, the kind of light that exposes illusions and reveals truth. This truth often makes others uncomfortable because it demands accountability. Her presence begins to challenge every space that expected her submission. She's no longer apologizing for her emotions, her choices, or her past. Every version of herself that she once buried under fear and guilt begins to emerge, stronger, wiser, and softer all at once. The real message is not that she's changing, it's that she's finally showing up as she truly is. All the emotions that once made her feel ashamed, the anger, the sadness, the restlessness, now serve as guides instead of enemies. They are signals pointing her toward freedom. She understands now that what society calls crazy is often the language of liberation. It's the sound of a woman remembering her worth, rewriting her story, and reclaiming the life that was always hers to live.